Welcome to Gray to Great, the podcast where we will pull back the curtain on what it truly takes to thrive as a corporate retirement plan advisor in today's tech-powered business world. I'm Dan Deldegan, but all my friends call me Triple D. As a former sales leader and CEO and now board member of Great Gray Group, I know that success in this field goes beyond the numbers. In each episode, I'm going to team up with one of your peer retirement plan advisors to bring you the strategies that separate the best from the rest. From prospecting and referral business to challenger selling and tech adoption, we're diving deep into the parts of the business that too many of us overlook. Whether you're here to sharpen your skills or if you're looking for the next big idea, this is where the playbook gets rewritten. So get ready for sharp, actionable insights that'll take your practice to the next level. Because in sales, there's no gray area. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gray to Great. I'm your host, Dan Deldegan. And I'm delighted to be joined today by two guests, not just one, teammates from Prevail Innovative Wealth Strategies out of Leawood, Kansas, outside of Kansas City. We have Bryan Farwell and Jesse Hernandez. Hello, Bryan. Hello, Jesse.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Dan. I'm actually Jesse. That's Bryan, just in case the audience gets confused.
A lot of confusion around that.
I clearly you look like twin brothers, having grown up.
We get that a lot. There's a lot of mistaken identity, but we usually clarify it at some point in the meetings.
As long as we've worked together, you would think that we're brothers. So we've got a lot of similarities.
That's right.
Well, that's a great jumping off point, Bryan and Jesse. Tell us the story. How long has it been, and what's the origin story of how you guys came together?
Jesse, you want to
sure.
start?
I'd be happy to start. So 30 plus years in the industry, and all by accident, Dan. I graduated from William Jewell College in Liberty, Missouri, had my communications degree, and spent the next 6 months working in a gym trying to figure out what I was going to do. And a good friend of mine popped in and he said, "Hey, what are you doing now?" And I said, "I'm just working here, but my parents are going to kill me if I don't find a real job." He said, "Well, why don't you come up to," at the time it was 20th Century, American Century, well-known financial mutual fund company here in Kansas City. And I thought he was talking about Century 21. And I said, "I don't know anything about real estate." And he said, "No, this is mutual funds." And I said, "I don't know anything about mutual funds." And he said, "We'll train you." And that was the start of my career. I entered into the financial services industry, started in account services, just setting up accounts, was not very good at it. Got into customer service where I could just talk, and I really blossomed from there. 401k was a newer industry. 20th Century, American Century jumped on that bandwagon, had their own platform. I started working, answering the phones in the participant services arena. Moved over to the enrollment team, which was very glamorous at the time. You actually got a phone card. So when you went to the airport, you could use your phone card. There was no cell phones, obviously, at the time. Had an expense card, which I could not believe. And I spent a good 7 years on the road doing that. And then I shifted from there. I had a recruiter call me, worked for ING for 1 year. And 9/11 hit. There was a reorg. I left. I worked for a bank, Marshall and Ilsley, M&I out of Wisconsin, for a couple of years. And I got the call back. Voya was needing somebody. I moved back to Voya on the service side for a year, got promoted to sales, and I was a wholesaler for 20 years, wholesaling the 401k platform to advisors throughout the Midwest. Bryan happened to be one of the advisors I called on. So I've known Bryan a good 15, 20 years. I think he had hair at the time. That's how long I've known him. And he was a great partner. And, through the years, I'll tell you, a wise man once told me, he said, the older you get wholesaling, the more you become a diminishing asset. And I didn't really understand that. But at 58, after 20 years on the road, he began to have discussions with me about maybe it's time to be an entrepreneur, to kind of move over to the advisory side. It was something that always intrigued me. Obviously, I called on advisors who sometimes made me want to pull my hair out because I saw so many better ways in which they could be doing things. And so I made the leap a year and a half ago, came over to the Prevail family, and have really enjoyed growing the team, building the team, and helping to enhance what was already being done at an elite level. So that's a little bit about my background and my story.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love how you guys intersected. You were business partners already. You had that rapport and that basis of the relationship, and then ended up as teammates. Bryan, add in your story, if you would, please, on that foundation that Jesse just laid for us.
Absolutely. Dan, it might shock your audience. I did not start at Gold's Gym like Jesse did. That's probably pretty obvious from the camera view. But I've always been in the banking, wealth management, private banking space. I had a lot of great mentors and a lot of great people that guide me along that path, and just a ferocious work ethic. I look back at my dad driving a UPS truck for 35 years, my mom running the local flower shop on the square, my dad getting off work and coming in and helping her out. And, we've had this desire, this drive to help people in any capacity, whether it's obviously in the financial services space or in something completely unrelated. And as you kind of move through that banking, wealth management, or private banking channels, obviously I had that opportunity to work with great partners. And a lot of this comes down to those friendships, those partnerships that you build over time. And when Jesse and I connected, he started telling me the story about, the record keeping capacity and where this thing can go and all the different services and things. I mean, some of these were really, technology kind of breaking, like just really, really impressive, different strategies out there. I went, man, I need to be more aligned with this individual. So Jesse and I's friendship quickly, blossomed. I had my own investment firm for a number of years. So it was a great learning experience. Boy, you want to be humbled. There's times that you get humbled in that business, and any business that, you're an entrepreneur. And a little bit like Jesse, I had the great pleasure of meeting the leadership here at Prevail, the ownership team, and just some of the most incredible people I've ever had the opportunity to connect with. We gelled instantly. The time and the resources they dumped into me, and I wasn't even part of the team yet. Obviously, that conversation continued to flourish, and I joined the team. So technically been here since the start, but you might say not really, because there was some shared services between our joint firms. And now the great pleasure of working with Jesse and the rest of our team day in and day out. So it's been a phenomenal journey, and I'm just blessed in every single way.
Yeah, that's really cool. A tale of entrepreneurship and friendship, and it's blossoming and still growing.
We have a lot of fun together. That's one of the things that I think is, maybe lacking a little bit in some of, the workplaces now. We come in, everybody puts in their 45, 50, 55 hours a week, and it's, woe is me, I've got to do this. We're genuinely excited to come in here and see each other, talk about the weekends, hear about maybe some of the things that Jesse did with his family. I get to share what I'm doing, some of our other teammates. So it's a joy, to actually work with these people that have become great friends.
Well, to that point, Bryan, I have a sense, just knowing you guys through the preparation for this call and chatting right here, that you bring that energy to your client relationships as well, to plan sponsors, even plan participants, because that's an energy I suspect you guys bring into every interaction, every relationship. How does that play out for you?
Yeah, it's a 24/7 cultural fit. The number one thing that we do here when we're looking at trying to bring on the right team members, and Dan, you certainly understand this, it's a hard business. This is a business that's absolutely amazing. The things that we're able to help the sponsor, help the participants, help someone that maybe doesn't understand anything about a corporate retirement plan, throw dollars into it and get to retirement. That's a really monumental thing and a great pride that we get to put out there. But having the right team members is where it all starts. So making sure that we have the right dynamic around us. One of the things that we do here that I think is tremendously unique is our team approach. Now, a lot of firms talk about, hey, we have a great team, we have a great culture. But our team-based approach is at least unique and different from our perspective. It's wrapping these individuals around a plan. It's going out there and introducing Jesse's amazing record-keeping background of 20 plus years in the industry. My background, whether it's more on the investment side or the individual side, or maybe on the 401k side, bringing in a participant engagement coordinator that worked with one of the major record keepers or another one of our senior retirement strategists. So there's so many different lenses that we can lend this to, and that culture and that fit and that friendship that we have means everything to this firm.
And Dan, you mentioned energy, and I think that's the thing. We're a high energy team. Bryan is very high energy. He's got a tremendous work ethic. He's always in first and out last. I'm a passionate Latin guy. I mean, I take the same energy I applied when I played sports. I played small college football. I coach. And so it's really looking at the objective, the goal. What are we trying to do? We're trying to help sponsors and we're trying to help participants. These are really two different clients and really two different objectives sometimes, but at the end of the day, a shared objective. Right. And so what we want to do and what helps us sleep great at night is knowing that we're helping people. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that those people who are pursuing some type of financial independence have the medium, have the vehicle to get there. And we're helping the sponsors who are ultimately the ones that build it, make sure that it's being built right. And we feel very strongly about that.
I can see why you guys are good at it. You're passionate about it and you have an energy that tends to attract both talent and customers who are looking for expertise and sincerity. And
it's contagious. That's the thing. It's like this feeds into not only the businesses that we have the opportunity and pleasure of helping, but also our team. Everybody has rough days, right? We have rough weekends. But when you come in and you see your team members in great moods, positive, win-win type situations, high-fiving each other, smile on your face, that changes the entire feel of the organization. Our customers feel it. Our clients feel that. So when we go into those, whether it's the very first time of meeting them or the 25th time doing the plan review, these are people that's like, wow, they just have a great outlook on life. And we try to bring that great outlook day in and day out.
Yeah, Dan, years ago, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to say years ago when I was working as a wholesaler, one of the plans that we brought over to Voya through one of a shared friend of ours was my sister's plan. It was a very small plan at the time. And one of the things I told her is, hey, I will always tell you if and when this is not right for you. And I took a lot of care in how it was pulled together and working with the advisor. And I made a commitment that every plan I worked on, and that has continued over these last 30 years, and it continues here at Prevail, whether it's a startup, a small plan, a mid-sized plan, or a large plan, treat every plan as if this belonged to a family member. Be a caretaker and a steward and treat them the way that you would your very own family. And when you do that, you'll have success. You'll help people and you'll help them reach their objectives and goals.
That's a great litmus test because the care you take with for your own family member, you want everybody to feel they're getting that, right? Now to that's probably a good launching point into another idea that you shared in preparation for this call that I'm really intrigued by. And I think our listeners will be too. And that is that you mentioned Prevail was built on a philosophy, a belief, an observation that the financial services industry fundamentally is broken. Love to hear you expand on that and talk about how that's been reflected in what you've built at Prevail.
Yeah. And I'll start, I mean, at least from the 401k perspective, 401ks, it's a messy business and you've got multiple parts. And we talked a little bit before we jumped on here about being a foodie. So I use a lot of food analogies. You're making the sausage. The key is you don't want them to see you making it, but you're dealing with payroll vendors. You're dealing with prior record keepers. You're dealing with new record keepers. You're dealing with HR, you're dealing with sophisticated HR, you're dealing with a client who maybe is the owner and HR and payroll. So you're always on the move. You've got a lot of moving parts. And fundamentally, what you find is that it's a lot of advisors have moved and gravitated towards individual business. So more profitable business. The 401k business is not as profitable a business, but it's a very rewarding business. And the key is understanding the difference between profitable and rewarding. Of course, you want to have your revenue models. You want to be able to do what you say you're going to do. But I think fundamentally, where you're seeing a lot of issues in the 401k arena is advisors who work primarily on volume. So there's not a lot of servicing going on. It's very prepackaged. Or you're seeing what historically our industry calls the two-plan Tony. And that's somebody who doesn't even know the business. They're doing the individual business. They're getting thrown on as a BOR. They have no idea how to hunt, the type of work that goes into funds, fees, fiduciary, service, technology, education, all these things you need to get your arms around. And at the end of the day, I think fundamentally what it's lacking is passion. And I'll just give you a quick story and then we'll segue over to Bryan. But we were visiting some clients in Chicago and we were looking for the best deep dish pizza and Chicago beef we could find. And I'm sure you'll relate to this. We were in Schaumburg and we found a place called Joe's Pizza. And we walked in there. It was small. It was one of those places I like to go, more of a hole in the wall. You could smell the ingredients. And we started talking to the owner, Giuseppe. His name was Joe, and he went by Joe. And we started talking about, Kansas City and the foods that we like. And there's a big Italian community in Kansas City and a nice Mexican population, the different types of food. And we said, we want your best. And so he began to make us a deep dish pizza and Chicago beef. And he was in the back telling us about all the ingredients that went into it, the tomatoes that were from Italy. You got to use fresh garlic. You cannot microwave this when you're done. And pretty soon we were talking about his sons who went to engineering school. He still had a broken English. So he was an old world immigrant about my age. When we got done talking, he literally had tears in his eyes. We ate some of the best Chicago beef and deep dish pizza. We got in the car and I said, this is what our industry lacks. It lacks passion. It lacks somebody who understands both the art and the science of craftsmanship, of loving what they do and wanting to make sure that whatever they're serving, that it's the best product that they can put out. And we said, this is an experience we need to hang on to when we're driving 16 hours to Dallas and we've got a 6:30 in the morning meeting. We need to remember that we're up early making the dough fresh from scratch. We're letting it rise and we're using the finest ingredients. And that's how we'll be differentiators in what we call a broken industry.
Jesse, that was phenomenal. And I couldn't agree more. But Dan, I think it comes down to everybody wants a result, but few are willing to put in the work, right? Maybe call it our time in the industry, call it our age. And obviously technology has given us the ability to do this amazing podcast, right? I mean, it's brought us closer, but kind of that COVID era, it broke a lot of things as well, right? It broke the ability to look someone truly in the eyes, to really feel that passion. Now, once again, you already mentioned, I think we bring a lot of excitement and passion in the business. Jesse, kind of describing that, it takes you back to being in that restaurant. But being able to look someone in the eye, shake their hand, have that conversation with that committee and do the time and the effort that it takes, that's a deal breaker for so many things. There is a lack of service, generally speaking, in this country. Now, you could say that that's 401k related. You could say that that's phone industry related, purchasing a vehicle, whatever the case, right? There's great experiences and there's more difficult experiences. Every single day that the Prevail team walks through those doors, we just try to make it the best experience possible. Now, there's times that we have to do these things more virtually. I mean, just from a, pure logistics standpoint or a timing perspective. But when you can go in there, you can put in the time, the effort, and the work to be able to do something unique. It makes all the difference. And that is part of the passion that we bring, to the equation. That just makes this a different experience for everybody.
And Dan, I think there's too many advisors who are getting paid without doing the work. It's easy to hide in a 401k plan. When you look at your benefit structure, I remember several years ago, we were going to be saving a client about 20, 30 basis points. It was about $30,000. And I remember at the time when I was wholesaling, I said, gosh, it seems like a no-brainer. I said, Jesse, it is saving them money. It is an improvement. But at the end of the day, they're spending $1 million on their healthcare benefit. So 401ks can get lost. And there's a real fiduciary liability around them being lost. And at the same time, there's a missed opportunity. Employees don't always know what their employer is doing for them. They don't know that they're giving them free money. They don't know that they're giving them an access to financial independence. They don't know that they're giving them an opportunity to tax strategies with pre-tax and Roth and different things that they can do. And a lot of advisors did not grow up in the era we did. When we grew up, we literally went through training on how to craft emails, how to handle employees or participants or calls that went the wrong way. And we would role play them. And so for me, it's just stunning, when you don't get a call back from a vendor or when you say, hey, your prior advisor, how many times did they come out and do employee meetings? And they said, they've never been out here and done an employee meeting. how in the world are you going to help your employees understand the benefit that you're giving them, why they should be working there when they haven't even heard the story? So this is just what we love to do, and having done this for 30 years, literally meeting people 30 years later that said, hey, you told me about this plan. You told me to get into it. I came here with nothing. I've moved up through the company. I have $500,000 in here. Thank you so much. Very rewarding. Very rewarding. Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier, thank you for sharing that. Reminds me of your comment about, if I got this right, you have your team members actually sign up for the same plans that your customers are on. Can you expand on that?
From an individual perspective, we offer a wide variety, whether that's, personal investment management, private equity, venture capital, estate planning, off-market private real estate. Our investments, our personal wealth is invested just like our clients are. So it's kind of it's that old school, once again, approach of we're not getting something different. We're not getting something better, air quotes around that, than what our clients are. So it's a wonderful model. It's the fiduciary alignment. It's the way that it should be. And the results speak for themselves. It's what our leadership team has been able to not only offer to our clients, but also to each one of us, we're able to enjoy. And it's something pretty unique and pretty amazing.
That's very cool. And I'd love to dig deeper into the comment you guys made just in that last point about plan participant engagement, like coming and doing the employee meeting. How do you avoid it feeling like, okay, we're just all in the warehouse getting talked at, or we're sitting in the break room? How do you make that approachable? Because I would imagine for a lot of plan participants, even like me growing up in the software industry, I didn't grow up in financial services. So a lot of the concepts could come across as intimidating to the layman who doesn't spend every day in it like you guys do.
Yeah. And meet your clients where they are. That is a key phrase. Jesse and I, our team, additional team members, July 2nd, July 3rd, we drove from Kansas City, and we drove. Jesse and I are not flyers. But we didn't want to. We stopped and saw a client in Oklahoma City, had a great plan review, hit all the details, took care of some of his personal things, then drove down to Dallas, got in at 8 at night, had a wonderful dinner. 8 a.m., we are presenting to a wonderful new company that we just brought on. There's about 125 people in the audience. You've got people that, just like you said, some that understand deep financial services and some that don't understand anything. So we relate to them. We show them inflation. Jesse has an amazing story about his family and kind of where the price of, some of the food services were back in the 80s. And then we can relate that and show them, hey, inflation is something that's really impactful. How can we help you save? How can we help you beyond just your 401k? And once again, kind of show that passion and that excitement. You've got to try to make this relatable, because if you just go up there and you say, this fund's going to do this financial tool is going to do this, that's in one ear and out the other. We all live on our phones, right? Mine's plugged in right here, going off left and right, like I'm sure everybody else's is. We also have to show them the great technology. Once again, these partnerships that we've built with our providers, whether it's record keepers or TPAs, they have amazing tools and resources and financials for, financial tools that each of these participants can use. You've got to be able to show them where it's impactful to them specifically. And then maybe they want to bring in a spouse to have a deeper conversation. So you've got to relate to them specifically.
Yeah, let me just jump in and add on a little bit to that. One, to Bryan's point, we got to understand the demographics, whether it's blue collar, whether it's, engineers, a doctor's group, and we don't need to make any assumptions. We have to have a starting point of education. So to Bryan's point, we talk a lot about inflation because that's kind of the hidden erosion of your earning power. My wife's grandfather, when he came over from Italy, he started an Italian restaurant called Vitali's. And we actually printed a menu from the 70s. And we like to ask, everybody in the room, what's a good steak dinner cost today? Whether it's Morton's, whether it's Ruth Chris, whether it's Capitol Grill, and you're getting $50, $60, $70 for a 6 or 8 ounce filet. And that's not counting sides. And then I pull the menu up and I go, well, here you got a 14 ounce filet with sides for $2. So we start reining people in right off the bat. A burger today is now $20. Back then an Italian steak sandwich was 75 cents with your fries. We want people to understand that there is a real obstacle for them to build wealth, and it's not going to work just sitting in a cash equivalent, right? So we go through risk and reward and all those things. The other thing is, and I go back again, I'm very family oriented. I miss my mother dearly. She was an old world immigrant from the Azores, which is off of Portugal. Lost her 9 years ago, but she had a very thick accent, and she would say to me sometimes, honey, what do you do? Tell me, what do you do? And I would say, Mom, I go out and I tell people about their 401. What is a 401? Tell me. And I would explain it to her. And it added so much value in helping me to understand that the purpose of our employee meetings is not to prove how smart we are, but to help people to understand, to have an objective and give them a blueprint. The other thing is, we're not a one and done firm. Oh, you've got $3 million and we came and did your enrollment meeting. We're on Ronco's set it and forget it. No, we're going to come back again and again and again. And we build out a full communication calendar, literally a menu. And we say, can we poll your employees, or what do you think that they would want to see next? And we build out a curriculum so that we're always bringing fresh and new information. We work with our record keepers so we can gauge, how effective we are by age group, by gender, by emotion. Some of the record keepers can track how do people feel about their 401k plan. We're watching that. We're looking at that. We're reporting back to each other. We're reporting in our quarterly plan reviews. And then we're going back and we're making adjustments. This is rolling up your sleeves and making the pizza from scratch. And that's what we do every day.
I love it.
It's getting the people engaged. Jesse nailed it.
That's great.
Bryan, show me a little how you kind of flip the dough in the air.
Yeah. What, the twirl?
Yeah. Give us the twirl.
That might have been more of a cocktail shaker look.
Yeah.
Kneading the dough. I love it. Yeah, the analogies can go pretty far with the dough. So you guys, as a parent, I'm sure all of us as parents feel this, is if your kids get into a career where they find their calling, there's a few things more gratifying for a parent than to see your kids do what inspires them. And clearly you guys, many decades ago, maybe not too many decades, certainly took that path. So I'd love to hear an answer to this question. Let's imagine we have a time machine, and Jesse, you can go back and give a young Bryan advice at the start of his career in this business. And Bryan, I'm then going to ask you the same thing. If you could take that time machine and go back and visit a young Jesse, what advice would you give each other?
Do you want to go first, Bryan?
I will do it.
That'll set me up for later, right?
Right.
Okay, young Bryan, number one, I'm going to tell you, less product on your hair. It will have more.
It didn't work. I thought it was going to, Jesse. Maybe the peptides now, right?
No, right. That's number one. Number two, I know you burn the midnight oil, and you are a very passionate person. I would tell a young Bryan, make sure you stay focused, because when you're highly driven as you are and you're burning the midnight oil, take a moment to focus. And where is that focus? Make sure you're enjoying the things in the moment. I think one of the things that happened to me is I was always goal planning. I lived a very goal-oriented life, and it was always the next thing. And when I accomplished it, I was already ready to move on. And it wasn't until the birth of my beautiful daughter that I finally stopped and said, you know what? It's time to not always have the next goal. It's time right now to be in the moment. So I would tell you, be in the moment, enjoy your friendships, your families, keep striving, keep that energy focused positively, because we know at younger Jesse and younger Bryan, probably easy to kind of go one way or the other. But that would be my advice for you, that and less hair product.
Well, Dan, I can tell you, I think I know I've found those things here at this organization and with the friendships and the partnerships that we've built. So I feel like I've achieved a lot of those things that Jesse would have told a younger me to do, besides, obviously the hair product side. And for Jesse, when you get to work with someone that you respect, that you trust, that's a friend, knowing Jesse's background and the expertise that he brings and the passion and excitement he brings to an organization like us, and us trucking all around the U.S. to go see all these amazing sponsors and participants. And when he pulls out his lunchbox and maybe has a surprise, couple boiled eggs, maybe a can of tuna, just to lighten up
Keep the protein high.
The ride.
Good to keep the protein high.
I wouldn't change a darn thing. Jesse is a humble, amazing man, faith-oriented. He is an amazing family. He is a hard worker, and he grounds us. There isn't a day, he mentioned it earlier, somebody mentioned it. 401ks it's a messy business. It's an amazing business, but it's a messy business. When you get to bounce those ideas off of each other, when you get to lean on other team members that have great expertise and other life experiences, that's what makes this job really enjoyable and really fun.
Dan, I take back everything I said. Brian's keeping it real here in the Northland. Love you, buddy.
That's the advantage of going second, right?
Yeah,
I know that. I know it.
That's something very sentimental. Guys, this has been informative and also just inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, your mission. And I'd love to do this again. We'd love to have you back on the podcast to continue this dialogue. This has been a lot of fun. And I guarantee it's been really high yield for our listeners. So folks, tune in again for a future episode of Great to Great. And Bryan and Jesse, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having us.
Everybody.
Appreciate it very much.
Thanks so much, Dan.
Thanks for tuning in to Great to Great. I hope you're walking away with a few new ideas, a few bold strategies, and a bit more fuel to take your business further than ever. If you found today's conversation valuable, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a colleague. The best way to stay sharp is to keep learning together. So I'll see you next time right here where we will cut through the noise to bring you what really matters. Until then, keep pushing forward because there's no gray area in achieving success.